Farrik!
Hello, and welcome to Dank Farrik, a Star Wars podcast. We're your hosts, Tyler Mendelson.
And Carlos Gomez.
And today we're going to be talking about Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, from 2002, which was, in some people's opinion, it's the worst Star Wars film, especially of the prequels. And in others, they think, it's a worthy film just because of the Clone Wars sequences, with Geonosis. But we'll get into everything, and we'll get into all of the controversies and all the things that people love and hate about this film.
Yeah, dude, no, and this is a doozy because it's probably one of the most, I wouldn't say hated Star Wars movies because there's been a few of those in the recent years. But, when it came out, like people, like Phantom Menace was a disappointment for like old school fans who grew up in the 70s and 80s. But I don't think they expected to this, like they were, I think they were thinking like it can only go up from here. Like Phantom Menace was the lowest point, and I don't think they were ready for for what Attack of the Clones had to offer. I remember. So this film came out in 2002. I was around six or seven, and I remember very vividly watching this movie in theaters twice.
Yeah,
like once, like with two different friends from kindergarten, literally.
For me, the thing that makes it so significant is, I was 12 at the time. And my best friend, who is living with me now in my house, it was the first Star Wars film that we saw in theaters together, and we've been to every single premiere together since then.
No, I remember because the first thing I saw about Episode 2 was the TV spots, and I remember watching. Because I've watched Episode 1 and I was a big fan, and I was like, oh my god, there's a new one, there's another Episode 2 is coming out, that's amazing. And I remember in this TV spot I saw Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan with a beard and a mullet, and then I saw Anakin Skywalker with like the braid and the Padawan hairdo, and I remember thinking to myself, like, those are Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, because my very young mind like equated the similar hairstyles between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon for them, or even the beard, just to look. It was like they're back. Didn't Qui-Gon die? And then I realized the generations has shifted, and it was now Anakin being the one with the Obi-Wan look, with the braid and the whole Padawan situation.
Yeah.
But so the excitement for me was like off the charts, even as a 6-year-old. And I think it lived up to its hype. I mean, as a kid, I was super pleased with everything that came out of Episode 2. It's not until later, like from when you get into the internet side of things, that you start like hearing people shit on it, and then you maybe, like, if you're like a moody teenager, you get on that bandwagon for a while, which I did.
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. I think there's a lot of like things you can nitpick and, make jokes of, and think that it's like the worst of Star Wars for the dialogue and things like that. But there's also a lot of like good stuff that comes from it too, that I think it helps with the world building, and the prequels itself just like establish itself past Phantom Menace. Like it expands, it starts getting into the Clone Wars, and the makings behind that, and like how they came to be, and the whole master plan that Palpatine is making starts to like make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The machinations are like more evident as it goes along. I want to start with the title, because I remember there's a clip somewhere, I think it's on YouTube, you can look it up, where Ewan McGregor is like in some like a film festival that he's participating on, because he's releasing or doing promotion for some other film back in like 2001. And there was a journalist that asks him like, "What do you think of the new title for the new Star Wars movie, Attack of the Clones?" Because when actors film these movies, they don't know the final title. They know
Yeah.
like a working title, and the final title isn't even probably figured out until later.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this clip of Ewan McGregor learning that the title for episode 2 was gonna be Attack of the Clones, and he just bursts out laughing because he thinks it's a prank.
Really?
Because it's such a pulpy title
Yeah.
that he was probably like, no, they're yanking my
Yeah.
chain. And then you see him talking to like Nicole Kidman, like they just announced the title for Star Wars is Attack of the Clones, and they're both like laughing about it.
Yeah. Wow.
Which I think it's a good place to start because right out of the gate, you see in the crawl, Attack of the Clones, and it's definitely a throwback to like the pulpy sci-fi movies
Yeah.
of the 50s.
Invasion from Mars and all those
Invasion
like
from Mars. Yeah,
yeah.
like what is it?
Mm-hmm.
The Killer Tomatoes. What's that one? It's kind of like that. That little that like zany sense of adventure that
Yeah.
seep through, which is one of the big inspirations for Star Wars in the first place. The Flash
Mm-hmm.
Gordon of it all.
Yeah.
And in with that in mind, like the first thing you see in the title is the idea of there are separatists who think who want to separate, like the redundancies there, but they want to separate from the Republic because they think the Republic has lost their way.
Yeah.
And Amidala is going to Coruscant to have the Senate vote against the creation of clone army or of an army
Mm-hmm.
in general. At that point, we don't know anything about clones being involved
Right.
in that.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because the idea of somebody going against the man and telling them, we don't trust the government. It's to me, it's like a an interesting seed for the idea of the Rebel Alliance. If you think about it, the Separatists in the prequels play a similar role to what the Rebel Alliance did, only that in the prequels it was being orchestrated by Sidious and by
Yeah.
Dooku. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not till later in the movie. It's not really until the climax that you figure out that Dooku is a Sith Lord or that he's evil. At this
Mm-hmm.
point, you just think he's a political leader, and the
He's a
crawl sets that
political
up
idealist, not a murderer.
exactly. And Windu says like, like he couldn't assassinate anyone. It's not in his character.
I hate that line though, that like because he was a Jedi, it's not in his character, but like why isn't he a Jedi anymore? Like couldn't
Well,
it be?
right. But but also it speaks to the arrogance of the Jedi, which is a thing that Yoda brings up in the movie.
Yeah.
About how even the older, wiser Jedi masters have become arrogant. So it
Mm-hmm.
makes sense to me that Windu would like completely
Yeah, no,
discard that
it makes
possibility.
sense. It's just like it's funny to think like these guys who are so powerful and so wise are like tremendously stupid and like arrogant and like just don't realize everything going on.
No, and yeah, and
I
they
know that's the
acknowledge it.
point,
Yeah, absolutely.
but it's just ironic like to when you're watching it and you're thinking like
well, but
you have some kind of respect for these characters and you're like
right.
how are they like falling for this?
Well, but it's interesting because like on that same vein of like the zaniness of the 50s like alien movies, I feel
Mm-hmm.
George was drawing a lot of inspiration from those old genre movies.
Yeah.
And I think he said to himself that this movie is supposed to be like an homage to genres from the like old Hollywood genres from the 1940s. Like
Yeah.
noir is a big element of this
Oh
film.
yeah.
If you like everything's
With the
upside
mystery
down.
aspect.
Yeah, there's like an underlying sense of cynicism in Attack of the
Yes.
Clones, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like they're slowly discovering that they've been played,
Yeah.
this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like, even if you, it's the only Star Wars movie that the after the crawl, the it pans up instead of down,
Pans up. Yeah.
and then you see the ships go like the other way. It's just kind of like a great symbolism that the world is upside down,
Mm-hmm.
and when the ship goes into Coruscant, it's going into the fog,
Yeah.
just to show that they're like really blind into what's going on, which is a big
Didn't
theme of the movie.
didn't Force Awakens scroll up too? Pan up?
No, all of them go down.
Do they?
Yeah.
I could have swore Force Awakens went up also.
No, no,
I know up until this point, it was definitely the only one.
no, for sure. It's the only one.
Yeah. All
And
right.
it's in, but it's kind of like this idea that there's deceit everywhere.
Yeah.
Everything is a trickery because even the whole fog thing going down, but also there's a decoy.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is as it seems. It's kind of like a
I mean, the whole
undercurrent
film is
thing.
it's a detective film,
Yeah, absolutely, exactly.
which
That's where the
is
noir aspect
cool.
comes.
That like you might not like all of the movie or hate certain main aspects to it, but like you have to respect Lucas's way of trying to pay homage to like the genres of the past and the films of the past by tying them into Star Wars in all of his films, like in different ways. It's not all the same thing over and over, you know.
No, for sure. And it's interesting because he experiments. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that's great about the prequels. They're big experiments.
Oh yeah.
And it's like genre matching because he's in this movie in particular, there's two storylines going on, the Obi-Wan story and the Anakin slash
Yeah.
Padme story.
Yep.
And one of them is like dealing with like the great old detective genre of the 40s, being on a like
The Obi-Wan
Camino is
storyline.
literally like a rainy planet. It's like so noir,
Yeah.
and there's like the shades are like shaped in such a way that the lightning is it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going there asking questions. He's so confused. He doesn't know
Yeah.
what's going on. And in the other side, we see another genre which is also prevalent in the 40s and 50s, which is the romantic genre,
Yeah.
and it's like forbidden love. It's like the most classic interpretation of romance.
Well, there was also forbidden love as a big theme in noir.
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely.
So, it also ties into that as well. It's just different characters doing a different thing, you know.
Yeah, and it's a big. I like the idea of the theme, the love theme, because the love theme between Han and Leia, it's there, but it's the Padme and Anakin theme is so grand, and I think the theme it's supposed to carry the emotions much more so than the dialogue is just it's meant to be a throwback, and I know this may sound apologetic, but it's definitely like emulating that style of like complete earnest, uh like shooting from the heart type of dialogue of like that might seem corny, but that was like it was around when those genres were in the cinemas in the 40s and
Mm-hmm.
50s.
Yeah.
There's a great Sound of Music moment. That shot in Sound of Music where we see uh, Julie Andrews in the fields, which
Yeah.
is like a big thing when
Yeah.
Anakin
Looks
and
just like Naboo.
exactly
Mm-hmm.
Anakin and Padme flirting with the big pig things.
Yep.
I don't know what those are. Uh, but yeah, going back towards the first act. Um, I think you want to say something about the decoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just so everyone understands like how we operate this thing, we basically have a Google Doc where we write our little notes, like what we're gonna talk about, just so we stick on track. But I specifically put in for this one,
Yeah.
just for the intro scene, Padme's decoy's death, which it's funny, like they film it in a way to throw you off, like they make you think that that's Padme blowing up because it's the supposed queen's death, and you don't know that she's a senator right now. Like, I mean, you
The
see it in
crawl says
the
it.
crawl, but you don't really know anything that's going on. You don't know what a senator from Naboo looks like. You only know what the queen looks like. So you don't really know. Like, you think it's Padme, or you just don't really know
Right.
what's going
They
on. And
tell
then
you it's Amidala. Yeah.
you see Padme, who was in a position of power, immense power, essentially, is now just riding around in a freaking starfighter, like just not even she's being very independent, which is
Hmm.
it's building on her character. Um, but so the reason I put this part in there is I hate the way her decoy's death occurs. She blows up in this explosion, and then Padme runs up, and instead of making it like more dramatic or like whatever, it's just so cheesy and stupid. Like the girl's like, "I failed you, Senator. and then basically just droops dead like so suddenly. But she did exactly what she was meant to do. She's a fucking decoy. That was literally her purpose. How did she fail her? She didn't fail her at all.
Yeah, that line doesn't make much sense.
It makes no sense.
But but it's dramatic, and I get it. It's kind of like shooting at that. What's the most dramatic thing you could say before you die? It's one of those things. I don't think. Yeah, the feeling of it. I think it's.
There's just definitely a better line
Yeah,
they
for
could have
sure.
chose. I mean, you could say that with a lot of lines in this film, especially. But
Yeah,
that was just one scene. It was just so annoying. From every time I watch it, I'm like, "Grr!"
I mean, but if anything, even before that, um, I remember hearing. I don't. I think it was some video on the internet. But the first line of the movie. Well, the first line is like the guy telling the decoy like we're making our final like descent into Coruscant. Thank you
Mhm.
so much. But when they go down and Captain Typho starts speaking to Padme, which at this point we don't know it's Padme because she has a helmet on.
Yeah,
Um, he says, "I guess I was
I
wrong.
guess I was wrong.
There was no danger at all."
Yeah.
And of course, what happens when you say a line like that in the movie? Shit, it goes down. There, danger happens, and it chucks you like something out of a B movie, like a Friday the 13th movie, where
Mhm.
it's a little bit schlocky, but I think it's sort of on purpose. Like the idea of the oh my god, we just escaped the killer clown or whatever. We're
Yeah.
safe, thank God, because
Mhm.
we're in this cabin, and I'm standing right next to this window, but thank God we're fine. And then of course the thing comes right through the fucking window. But
Yeah.
it's kind of like that, setting it up to me as like an homage to the B movies because the
Yeah.
title is an homage to to the B movie genre, and the dialogue in and of itself feels like that, on
Yeah.
purpose. I
Mhm.
would argue.
Yeah. I mean, I like the things that are happening. It's just the execution of making those things happen and how they're played off.
Hmm.
Like, obviously, we both know George doesn't really understand how to convey emotion in his dialogue.
I don't know. I don't know. Is that a
Real,
like?
realistic emotion.
Well,
He
yeah, I guess so. I don't know if he's going for that though.
he doesn't know how to make realistic dialogue.
Right. But I don't know if it's going for that though, because it's like a
Uh,
space opera with crazy space wizards and creepy shit happening.
you could quote, yeah, or you could argue his genius all day, and I'll always give him that respect that he is a genius and everything he does like has a purpose. But I just think like especially with this movie, for example, the dialogue just is so unnatural that it takes away from the film.
Unnatural.
Uh,
Well, but credit credit where credit's due. This is the only of the Star Wars prequels that he co-wrote with somebody else,
yeah,
Jonathan Hales, who was
Jonathan.
Jonathan. Well, fuck you. Which was like I think because he got so much shit from Phantom Menace about his dialogue
Right.
that he just succumbed to it. He was like, okay, I guess I'll work with somebody to
Well,
help me with.
think about like Phantom Menace, Anakin expressing emotion. Yippee! Like no one fucking says yippee. Yippee! Like, come on, man.
I know, but yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying
He just
because
doesn't know how to express emotion, you know?
yeah, but I think there's a certain style to it though.
You gotta trust the characters,
You get
George.
just yeah,
Should
but
trust the characters.
the original movies didn't have like well, A New Hope had a little bit of that of like some lines that were kind of clunkers, but the actors made it work.
Yeah, they did.
Uh, but I don't know, man. I think it's kind of part of the deal. I don't think like you can say like episode 7. I think episode 7 like, and I know we're getting off topic, but
Yeah.
episode 7 has really crisp dialogue because Lawrence Kasdan is great at dialogue, and I think that's good. But to me, it's not really like Star Wars shouldn't be too contemporary. You know what I mean? Like it shouldn't feel like a modern day New Yorker speaking
No,
or
yeah.
whatever.
No, I
You know.
agree with that sentiment.
So the fact that it's stylized and it's taking place in like a fantasy land, in like it's like a fairy tale. I
Listen, man,
I forgive it.
for me, I love even the prequels as they are. I don't want them to change, you know? I
You can't
think
stop the change from happening
oh, well,
any
shut
more
the
than you can
fuck
stop the suns from setting.
up. I think they work for what they are, and I appreciate them for what they are. Even though I have these gripes, like I
Yeah,
still appreciate them and like these films.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, but so yeah, let's move further into the plot
Mm-hmm.
because we get Palpatine speaking with the Jedi about
Yes.
how the Republic has there's like this problem where they could split in two because the whole political plot that they set up in the crawl. You all know it. They
So,
want to create an army. The separatists are happening, and so there's pressure to create an army.
and I
And
was a little confused with this moment before you get into what you're about to talk about.
yeah,
In this scene, Palpatine says, "I will not let the Republic, which has stood for 1,000 years, blah 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 blah."
split in two.
So, is it 1,000 years or 1,000
I
generations?
know you were gonna
Because
say this. I knew you were gonna
that's
say this.
well, it's a good. I mean, it's a point to make. Like,
Right. Well,
was it
I
just a
don't know.
fuck up that
I think it's a fuck up. I think it doesn't
I
matter.
believe it. I believe it is a fuck up where like they're just not paying
So
attention
for
and
those who don't know, Obi-Wan Ben Kenobi said in the original one
for over a
that
thousand generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic.
exactly. And in
So
Attack of the Clones, we hear that the Republic has stood for 1,000 years.
yeah, which what?
Well, what if I think if I'm not mistaken, and I might be, the official explanation is that the Republic sort of got reformed at some point because it was supposed to be the old Republic before, and it wasn't in Coruscant, if I'm correct. I'm not sure because there now the canon is kind of like
If that's the case,
sexualized.
I'll accept the line.
I mean,
We'll have
the
to do
line
more.
doesn't really bother me either way because I get it. It's a fuck up, whatever. It's just something you say in dialogue because you need somebody to say something and you need a number, you know.
Yep. Yeah.
But the idea that Mace Windu says to Palpatine, we can't fight a war for you. We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers, which
Mm-hmm.
is a great line to summarize Jedi's and why they fail in the prequels because they
Mm-hmm.
start like he literally starts the movie saying that, and at the end of the movie he's leading armies like soldiers into battle.
he's he's literally running with his lightsaber over his head, like
Yeah,
leading them into
so
battle.
that I think that's a character arc if I've ever seen one. uh, where it's like he's de-evolving, or the Jedi are in general, because I think even though Yoda is a good you know person to watch, a character to watch as to who represents the Jedi, I think Mace Windu is a character who represents why the Jedi failed in all
I
the
agree. I think Mace is as good of a Jedi as he is of like, he's a master swordsman, he's wise, he's this and that. He's so much about the Jedi's arrogance and
Mhm.
disillusionment with what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Um and I don't think it was intentional. I don't think he had any kind of like personal intentions for it to be like that. It's just in his character and in the Jedi, like at this point in time, have reached this level of just with the council, and they just lost their way,
Hmm.
and he's just the perfect embodiment of that.
No, for sure. No, I think he represents that in many ways,
Yeah.
and also his lightsaber is purple, which is really cool. Also,
He
yeah,
specifically asked George. He
Sam
basically
Jackson did.
demanded, yeah, Samuel L. Jackson demanded that he have a purple lightsaber.
You can look up that clip online where he asks him, where he's like,
It was in the making of
yeah,
uh
the
DVD.
doc,
Yeah, but
yeah, but in that scene, we also get that line, which we talked about a little bit earlier. How Count Dooku is an idealist, not a murderer. It always struck to me that they introduced Count Dooku as like the main antagonist in the crawl. They talk about him in that little instance that I
Yeah.
just mentioned, and he never shows up in the movie until like an hour or some
Mhm.
later.
Yep.
Like he's not present through most of the movie, which is interesting.
And I kind of wish they introduced him earlier to where like we see him, and I would like for them to have shown him in like a positive light, or one that like we don't think anything wrong of him, you know? Like he's just some guy who has like a message, like, you know, he's just doing his own thing. Just so
Right.
that
Well,
we get like the shock of him being like a Sith Lord, you
I
know?
feel like we get that though. I personally feel because
Well,
the scene when he talks to Obi-Wan, when Obi-Wan is like all caught up, and he kind of makes a plea that if we join, we'll be able to destroy the Sith.
yeah.
At that point, you don't know he's a Sith Lord, and you think
But
like, oh
that's
my god,
so
he's trying to kill the
far
bad guy.
into the movie, and we had already heard him talking with the other, um, the separatist leaders at that point.
Yeah,
So we already know he's a bad guy.
right. No,
So we know he's just trying to like cause confusion and like distrust in Obi-Wan, and
but
like
we don't know.
he
I
might
don't
have
think
his
we know
own
for sure
motives.
though.
He probably has his own motives, which we'll get into. But I think they needed to introduce him sooner so we can make our own judgments and then be shocked or surprised or whatever when he is revealed to be a Sith Lord and working with Palpatine and Darth Sidious at this point.
I think with many things in this movie and in noir in general, I don't think you're meant to know what to. Yeah, you don't know what to make of Count Dooku right at the gate, and I think that little question mark hanging over him, and the idea that he proposes to destroy the Sith, to me is interesting because for a viewer who's like not informed, you might think that maybe he is the villain clearly, but maybe he's a well-intentioned villain, and he
Mm-hmm.
just hasn't figured out that he's working with bad guys. Um, and also there's that idea that the even though we know that the Viceroy is bad from the first movie, at this point, like Count Dooku mentions, um, that the Viceroy felt betrayed by Darth Sidious.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a weird third party. The bad guy,
Mm-hmm.
the real bad guy is Sidious, of course, and the Jedi
Right.
know this, and we know this as the audience because we've seen the first one. But the Separatists become kind of like this weird third party, and then we later find out it's also Sidious.
Yeah.
Um, but so going back to the first act, we get introduced. After a whole thing, we got to protect Padme. We get introduced into with Anakin and Obi-Wan, and like Anakin being such a bratty teenager. That made a lot of audiences dislike on Anakin, which many people attributed to the actor, but I don't think that's fair because I think
Yeah,
the actor did exactly what he was asked to.
I
I
agree.
think they disliked the character more so
Hayden
than the actor.
Christensen did a good job with what he
Yeah,
had.
no, for sure.
And he got
And
just like Jar Jar and Ahmad Best, he got so much hate
yeah,
for
we
his
didn't even
role, and
touch on
I
that,
feel
but yeah, Jar Jar
I
is
feel
bad,
really
bitch.
bad. Yeah. Obi, Obi, Misa so smiling to see you, sir.
There you go. That's kind of like a feud to the audience, like him in the first one. There's this moment when he looks at the camera almost, and he's like smiling.
It breaks the fourth wall. Can you
Yeah,
imagine?
exactly. He just
Like,
kind of looks at the
fuck
camera and
you.
smiles. He's like, "I'm back." Also, when George was writing episode 2 and he was like producing it, the working title was Jar Jar's Big Adventure.
Yes. Yeah.
To like fuck with fans a little bit more
Literally.
on the movie. We get the great Coruscant chase, which I think, like, in technical terms, is great. I don't think there's much to be said about that.
Mhm.
But we also get the idea that there's a bounty hunter like chasing them.
What do you think of, like when that scene comes into your mind?
Mhm.
What comes to your mind? Like what makes you
The whole chase.
instantly? Yeah.
What the?
What the?
You don't remember that? There's this little moment when
Was that like when they reach the club?
no when Obi-Wan is like flying with like he's hanging from
Mhm.
the thing,
Someone says what the? I don't
and
remember
like
that.
he bumps into some, and he's like, "What the?"
Oh.
And then the other Sebulba alien, the Doug, is like,
Yeah.
Jedi Voodoo.
I remember that.
I
Yeah.
love those little extras that are sort of
Yeah.
reacting to how the Jedi are fucking around in the galaxy.
Mhm. For me, like I could just picture that scene in my mind just because of the sound effects, especially
Mm,
the
yeah.
and the from the ships, you know.
No, that's great. No, in
Yeah.
a technical term, like you can't even like the pod race. I think sets up the craft of the whole trilogy.
Oh
Like
yeah,
from a sound department and even like visuals,
they did such an
just
amazing job with it.
groundbreaking.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's much to be said about that in that respect because like it would just be blowing it about how great it is. So we get to the club. We get also a great noir moment when we see the Sam Wessel like take out her gun to shoot
hmm
somebody at the club, and you because the way the camera cuts, you assume it's Anakin,
Yes.
and it's Obi-Wan, and that's kind of like part of that little trope of noir where the filmmaker is kind of keeping you in the dark or trying to
hmm
trick you into thinking one thing is the other.
Yeah.
Uh, also the dead sticks
You
in.
want to buy some dead
You don't
sticks?
want to sell me dead sticks.
I don't want to sell you dead sticks.
That's one of the great scenes of the whole
I
trilogy.
l-
Fuck everyone.
uh
No. It's great, and it should be put on the pedestal of like top five
just
somewhere.
stop.
It's
Just
it's one of the
it's not
only
bad. It's
it's
just
one of the
like
only
it's a very
scenes.
quotable
I
thing.
fucking love it. It's one of
It's
the
just so
only
minor.
scenes in like one of the only few humorous scenes in the prequels that like I think sticks the landing so well because there is
hmm
some humor that it's fine, whatever. There's some humor that's cringe. There's some like there's in the spectrum of humor. I think that one is just flawless, and it reminds me a lot of the original trilogy in that respect because it's something that like some fun stuff that I think would happen in
It's
that
also just cool to see Obi-Wan using the Jedi
mind
mind
trick.
trick like he
Yeah.
did in the original trilogy, you know?
Also, he cuts Sam Wessel's hand, which is kind of an echo of what he does in Episode
Of
Four
what
in
he
the
does
cantina.
in the cantina. Yep.
Yeah.
hmm
Um, but yeah, we get set up with this plot of the bounty hunter. We gotta go get the bounty hunter. Anakin gets sent to get Padme, which he argues she won't like that. So he gets sent to the Chancellor, so the Chancellor talks to her and convinces her. And this is a great scene, I think, that sets up the seeds for the Anakin Palpatine relationship and how they like that scene kind of makes it clear that like in the 10 years between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, they've been hanging out and talking to each other and have a mentor mentee type of relationship,
Yeah.
which makes sense. And he's of course always telling Anakin everything he wants to hear, you know, to
hmm
kind of like try to win him over as
Yeah.
as a father figure in many ways, which is something that Anakin doesn't have.
Yeah.
Uh, Obi-Wan tries to find where that saber dart that kills Sam Wessel comes from. Of course, it's not in the Jedi archives.
So it's cool. Hold on. Before then,
Hmm.
when Sam Wessel dies and we see the introduction of Jango Fett,
Barely,
something
yeah.
something cool that people might not realize. Sam Wessel's final words. Uh,
Hmm.
do you know what they mean?
It was like bounty hunter slime or scum
Bounty
or
Hunter Slime Ball.
slime ball. Yeah,
Slamo was the
slimo.
just
Yeah,
like Anakin says in episode 1 as the little kid.
yeah.
But it's just cool like that, we don't get any kind of like subtitles that say this.
Right.
So
Is
it's
the
just like one of
characters?
those neat little thing for you to find out.
Yeah, and then at that point we're the same page as the characters because the characters don't understand it, and
Don't
neither
know
do we.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, we get that detective mystery story going, and the other side we get the romance story
Mm-hmm.
going, where they go to their Italian vacation in a beautiful villa by the lake.
Yep.
We also hear that
Naboo is definitely the most beautiful planet we've seen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We also hear that Newt Gunray hasn't been arrested because of the corruption of the courts, or
He
that's the
was
implication
tried
anyway.
4 times, or was it
I,
6?
I can't remember the exact number, which speaks to the corruption of the courts, but also it reintroduces Newt Gunray into the story because he's the
Mm-hmm.
one that's sending Django to kill Amidala, and supposedly later we
Yep.
find out. We get to Camino, which is a great noir planet, the missing planet Camino.
Mm-hmm.
I skipped Dexter Jetster, but you know I don't think there's much to say
Who
other
was
than
named after George's son.
he's amazing, and it's a great scene because it's
I
also a
love
50s
I love
homage.
impersonate. Yeah, the diner is like a very 50s style
Yeah,
with the droid waitress and everything.
it's him
But
going back to American Graffiti.
yes, I love I love impersonating Dexter just because he has such a grovelly voice. Obi-Wan, oh buddy.
Hello, Dax. Yeah, it also gives Obi-Wan a little bit more character because it shows that he has friends. Outside the Order,
Yeah.
he has a life.
Hmm.
And also speaks about how the regular citizen thinks of Jedi. About how the Jedi droids are not as great as you like. The street smart is still more powerful than the average tower Jedi that are like going on with their
Yep.
analysis droids.
Hmm.
And I think Dexter speaks to that.
It's world building stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. And also helps move the plot forward. We hear
Yeah.
for the first time about how Kaminoans are cloners, them good ones too.
Yep.
Uh, so when we get to Camino, we see uh, it's not Lamassu. What's the girl that greets
Tonwi.
Tonwi? Of course, how could I forget Tonwi? And she's like, "Oh my God, we've been expecting you," and he's like, "What? I'm expected?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah." So they go meet Lamassu, the prime minister, and
May I present to
yeah,
you Lamassu?
yeah. And all of this happens because he's tracking down Django, or the
Yep.
bounty hunter. He doesn't know yet who it is.
Yeah.
Um, and we hear for the first time about the clone army. Conveniently, at the beginning of the movie, they were trying to vote on whether or not to create an army of the Republic, and
Mm-hmm.
now Obi-Wan just stumbled into a clone army.
Yeah.
And who was the clone army made for? Well, for the Republic, of course, as the Kaminoans say. Um,
This army is for the Republic.
so somebody is doing something behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
They speak for the first time about Sifo Dyas,
Yeah.
which is I always thought as a kid Sifo Dyas was Qui-Gon Jinn, like
Why?
because I thought maybe it was an alias for him,
Mm.
because he speaks about how Sifo Dyas was killed over 10 years ago, and I was like,
Oh,
well, who was
that's a
the
good
Jedi
point.
I saw get killed
Yeah,
10 years? And I always thought it was
it's a good
Qui-Gon.
point. Yeah.
It was not until later that I found out it was different Jedi, but
Yeah.
it's weird because not until the Clone Wars do we get a clarification in the movie itself of
Right.
what was the deal with Sifo Dyas. They kind of talk about him like the audience already know who he is, which is
Yeah.
weird to me.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I wish there was a little bit more backstory or explanation on Sifo Dyas,
mhm,
whether it
which-
came before or after this.
right, but we got it in Clone Wars, which was great.
Yes.
I like that.
Exactly.
Those are some of my favorite Clone Wars episodes
Mm-hmm.
when they deal with the Sifo Dyas. We meet the clone army. Um, it's great. I Apart from being a noir planet, I also like the idea that Camino. It's kind of like also like old sci-fi, you know.
Yes.
Um, and it's because Star Wars people, it's fantasy. It's not
Mm-hmm.
sci-fi. People think about it in sci-fi, and some people do.
I
But
really dig the style of, the interiors of how it's like this purity.
yeah,
You get this pure white, and that resonates not only with
it's
like the Caminoan surroundings and
sterile, super
buildings,
sterile.
but the clones as well
It's a
with
laugh.
their armor.
Yeah. And also, if you look at it, the design of the clone armor, like they have a little fins on the top of the
Hmm.
helmets, just like the Kaminoans.
Exactly.
And if you look at the droids, they kind of look like the Geonosians a little bit. So they are kind of like similar to the ones who created them,
Yeah.
which makes complete sense. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we meet Django, and we also learn about his unaltered clone, Boba.
Boba.
He was so what is it? You was so when he says like hi to
Oh,
the thing.
hey, Boba. You know it's sweet.
Yeah. uh, we met little Boba, and of course, all fans, lose their collective shit. I love that scene when Obi-Wan and Django are meeting for the first time, and they both know. Like Obi-Wan knows he found the guy he was
Yes,
looking for,
exactly.
and Django knows that
Jango
he was
knows
looking
that
for
he
him,
knows. Yeah.
and they're kind of both looking at each other and giving each other a stink eye and like
Mm-hmm.
trying to be cordial and like diplomatic, but they
Yep.
both know that this is like this is the moment,
Yeah.
and it's great. Right before Obi-Wan
But
leaves,
I
he
will
gives him like the
say,
look.
hold on. I will
Yeah,
say, respect to Django as a character though, because he never lies to Obi-Wan the whole time. He does not lie to him.
yeah. He's just a simple man trying to make his way in the universe.
But he says he's been to Coruscant once or twice. He was recruited by a man called Tyrannus. Like,
That's
you know,
one
like
thing I want to bring
all
up.
of this stuff is true. He does not lie to Obi-Wan at all.
Yeah. No. So Django says he doesn't know any Sifo Dyas. So he was recruited by a man called Tyrannus.
On one of the
One,
moons of Bogdan.
yeah, one of the moons of Bugden. But it's interesting because they bring it up, and everyone's like, "Oh, really? Okay."
Yeah.
Everyone probably assumes he's lying.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's the only time we hear the name Tyrannus until the end of the movie.
Yes.
And if you don't pay attention, like as a viewer, you don't make that connection.
Mm-hmm.
That line, that little name, Tyrannus. Also, it's also weird because he pronounces it Tyrannus, and at the end of the movie, when Sidious says it, he said Tyrannus, Lord Tyrannus. So they
Lord
pronounce it
Tyrannus.
differently. They pronounce it differently, which only adds to the confusion to the audience, especially since it was only mentioned twice in the movie.
Yeah.
But for a viewer, this is like one of the few, like I think it's one of the Star Wars prequels that rewards multiple viewing because of it. Because since it's a mystery, you kind of get to see a lot of the big picture when you go back to it. Maybe you didn't catch Tyrannus the first time, but the second time you're like, oh my god. So
Mm-hmm.
unlike the other ones, I think from a plot perspective, it benefits from multiple viewings.
Yeah.
Um, we get Anakin. He declares to Padme his love. It's a whole thing. They're in a fireplace. She's wearing a great dress. Um,
Her clothes just get more and more revealing as the film goes on.
well, it's a romance. Uh, and and he has a nightmare about his mom, which was set up earlier in Coruscant. The whole thing about his
Mm-hmm.
recurring nightmares. So he goes to Tatooine to go save her, the same way that Luke realizes that his friends are in danger in Cloud City, and he goes even though he's not supposed to.
You know something that just sort of like I literally just pieced in my mind as like a possibility.
Mm.
What if Sidious
Planted.
hired
Oh,
the Tusken Raiders to
damn,
capture his
that's pretty
mother?
dark.
That's a major point in his turning.
No, it is for sure. I don't know. I don't like that thing, and it's also being brought up a similar thing in episode 3, where it's like, did Sidious plan the nightmares of Padme's death? You know, and
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think, like, I'd like to think those things happened regardless. Like, I think the Jedi failed Anakin more so than Sidious orchestrated the whole thing. He did, but the idea that the Jedi took Anakin from his mother and then not provided him with the parental
Hmm.
guidance he needed,
Yeah.
it's really what fucked him up. And whether or not his mom was in danger was not up to Sidious.
Yep.
Whether or not Anakin actually like cared for his mom and had to go back to her because he missed her so much, that's
Hmm.
on the Jedi for not being able to equip him with the emotional tools to bear that burden.
Mm-hmm.
But we meet the Lars family. You know, we get a little detour with Watto, which Watto is one of the great characters, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love Watto.
I love Watto.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he gets intimidated by Anakin, which is great because
Mm-hmm.
he was such a dirtbag to him.
Yeah.
The first one.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, we get to the Lars family, Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. We get reintroduced to Threepio, which Threepio originally was still supposed to have his the Phantom Menace look, where he hadn't coverings at all.
Now he's silver.
Now he's silver, but they added that in green screen because there was supposed to be the scene when Padme covers him up.
Yeah.
Got cut out. So Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru, and then this guy Clique Lars.
Klieg Lars.
Yeah. And we get a great moment. I think it's a great moment. And also the John Williams stuff going on in the background when Clique Lars is just telling the story of how they went to pick mushrooms. And, just look at Anakin's reaction. And
do you remember how many went out and how many came back?
30 of us went after her. And 4 of us.
Good job, Carlos.
There we fucking go.
Good job.
Good. And so Anakin goes to look for her. We get this I think it's a great moment, and it's a great directorial moment when Anakin and Padme are hugging just before he leaves, and we stay on their shadows on the homestead, you know?
Yeah.
And I always wondered about that shot as a kid, and even now today, I think it's an amazing choice. And I love that I'm not quite sure what it means, because you could interpret it many which ways, but it's definitely like a choice by Lucas. I don't know if it's just like him trying to be flashy, but he rarely does things void of purpose. I think in that sense, but we get Duel of the Fates a little bit there with the speeder bike. It is a great little callback, and the whole thing with the mother goes down.
But the reasoning for using Duel of Fates there is perfection. As we discussed in our recent episode with the meaning behind Duel of Fates, and with Qui-Gon's death, Anakin is put on this path where he doesn't have a father figure to grow up with. And he is now set on this path, and with the loss of his mother is just furthering just the destruction of him as a person. And Obi-Wan is the brother figure. He's not a father figure to him, so it's just it's just reinforcing that sentiment that Anakin has already lost his father figure, and now he's about to lose his mother, so it's just continuing him down that path to the dark side.
No, for sure. We also cut then to Geonosis, where we learn about the Separatist plot, about how Newt Gunray's behind it all, with Count Dooku. Yeah, he will not rest until he has her head in his desk, which I always thought was a goofy line.
It is funny.
Then the slaughter happens. You know which one? The only one.
The great moment
when the mother dies, and he kills everyone, and not just the men.
Not just the men.
No.
But the women and the children too.
Yeah. We get that.
But that part still, aside from how hilarious it is, like watching Hayden Christensen act that part, is after he literally tells Padme that he slaughtered an entire village of men, women, and children. She reacts by saying, "To be angry is to be human."
Yeah. Well,
what? Would you say that?
Well,
if somebody was like, "Hey, I just murdered a fucking village of fucking men, women, and children, innocent people."
No, I know. It's a stretch, but I buy it.
Because Star Wars.
because Star Wars, and also it clearly like she knows Anakin since he was a boy, and he's clearly been, he's not like this, or he wasn't like this, and he like shit has happened to him, like situations have happened to him that have forced him to like on a certain path, as you say, like the fates
Yeah.
have decided for him. So
Mm-hmm.
he's very much a tragic character, and I think they
Oh yeah.
play it like that. And
Mm-hmm.
in that sense, I think that's where the pity that she presents comes from.
Yeah.
um the fact that he's supposed to suppress all of his emotions, because they also
Mm-hmm.
speak about that earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
um but yeah, but I get it. I think it's one of the great. I think it's one of my favorite Hayden Christensen, and even though people sometimes make fun of it, I think he committed to the whole thing,
Yeah.
uh, of like saying that like really impassionate, um, evil speech. It's not evil, but it'll soon be. Um, this great line that I always love this line because of how much it means when they're eulogizing Shmi. Uh, Anakin says, "I wasn't strong enough to save you, but I promise I won't fail again."
Mm-hmm.
I love that moment
Yeah.
because he
It's
fucking does.
great foreshadowing
Yeah.
of why he is so persistent to saving Padme. You know, he cannot, and not even just that, but when he's about to explain to Padme what happens,
Hmm.
he's he says, "Life is so much easier when you're fixing things. I've always been good at fixing things."
Hmm.
You know, it just shows his character to a T that he is constantly trying to keep things in his control, and he cannot take it when life acts out without him being able to fix it or have the means to take control, you know?
Yeah. No, for sure. And that's the whole thing about the Jedi. About
Mhm.
having learning to let go, um, of everything you fear to lose.
Yep.
Um, for sure. No, it's great. And it's a great moment because it speaks to his whole arc. Um, we get that little scene where the Senate and everyone back at Coruscant learns the separatist plot, and they talk about how the Chancellor will need emergency powers. Of course, it's like they're all basically saying that Jar Jar should do it without saying it, and Jar Jar is like looking confused. It's like, oh my god, maybe I should say it.
Mhm.
Also, it's one thing that I didn't mention earlier, which I think it's worth noting. We get introduced to Bail Organa in this movie. Even though he
Yeah.
doesn't do much in this, he kind of represents the loyalist committee in some sense when Padme's not
Yep.
around. I love that we get like it's kind of like the way Mace Windu was introduced in Phantom Menace. He didn't do
Yep.
much, but he was being set up for later. And I think the same thing is of Bail Organa, where in Revenge of the Sith he does have stuff to do.
Yeah.
Um, but he gets Jar Jar, the most innocent character in the whole thing,
Yeah.
is the one that innocently,
Literally
uh,
gives way to the rise of the empire,
right, which makes
which is
some.
crazy to think.
I love it because it's this whole thing of how innocence is lost and how evil became like the status quo. It was
Mhm.
by manipulating the foolish, not the
Yes.
foolish because Jar Jar,
The
but
innocent.
the innocent. Uh, we get into the droid factory scene with
This
Threepio
is the
doing shit.
one scene for me in the movie that is just so useless. Like it felt like they were trying to just add time to the
We
film.
needed another action beat though.
I understand that. It's just like this scene just went nowhere.
No, I get
Like
it.
I get that it led to their capture, but it just fell so flat for me.
You know
Every
what's
time
so
I
weird about
watch
it?
the movie, I
Hmm.
want to skip this part.
Yeah, I kind of made my peace with it. You know what
Yeah.
I love about this, or what I think is so fucking weird
What?
is I don't love it, but I think on the contrary, they use Yoda's theme in this section of the movie. Do you ever notice that?
What?
Yeah,
What?
there's a point in the droid factory action scene, and you should go back to it. The soundtrack, because this is like a reshoot as well. This little scene is a reshoot,
Mm-hmm.
so it was pretty late in the game where they just played the whole scene. Like they just acted it out in a green screen, and then or blue screen, and they figured it out later. Uh, the same thing with the music. The music wasn't done. There's a lot of music in Attack of the Clones that's recycled from previous movies, from Phantom
Yeah.
Menace and such.
Hmm.
And in the sense of in this instance, they used, because they were reusing other music, because John Williams didn't record music for this sequence.
Right.
There's a point in the sequence where you can hear Yoda's theme playing over Anakin, I think, which is so weird. Why? It just irks my brain. And it kind of, I think it's kind of lazy. Um,
That is
they
pretty
could
lazy.
they could have used. For all I care, they could have reused other music. Just why use Yoda's theme when he's not present? I don't know, but look it up. Also,
I'm
so
literally on YouTube right now, just
yeah,
like skipping through the song.
yeah. We also get Threepio doing a bunch of great things for the kids.
Oh, I hear it.
Yeah, you hear it.
Wow.
It's weird.
So if you go on YouTube and look up Yoda's theme Droid Factory, the song will come up, and it's at about 420.
Nice.
Oh, sorry, 415.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Um, as I say, Threepio. There's this whole thing with Threepio that starts with the Droid Factory that, like, it's in the Geonosian arena as well, where we every once in a while we gotta cut back to Threepio and see what he's up to.
It's just fucking horrible. It takes away from an otherwise great moment.
I like it. I don't care where it is. It's that humor to the
God, die, Jedi dogs.
yeah. Oh, what did I say?
What did I say?
It's that humor, like that whole thing where his head gets dragged out by R2 and he's like, this is such a drag, or like, I'm quite
Yeah.
beside myself when
But
he's like right next to
the,
his body.
the thing that pisses me off is like they could have done that like maybe once, possibly twice. They did it so many times, and every single time it cuts to 3PO, he says another pun. Every single fucking time, he just makes another pun.
I love it because
Even when R2 picks his head up, he goes, "Oh, this is such a drag."
I love it because of how relentless. I love it because of how committed to the bit George is, where he's like, we gotta have some humor in here, so just have Threepio doing some fun things for the kids.
Yeah.
The Jedi come into play. Mace Windu shows up with his purple lightsaber, being all badass, and all the Jedi's come, and they all fight, and it's supposed to be like this big old action scene, which is great. It's a great moment for the fans. Jango Fett gets decapitated.
Yeah, pretty savage.
Pretty savagely by, of course, the asshole Mace Windu.
So this part I think is great, but the one thing for me that I wish just had more of an effect, I think they needed to make Boba's reaction stronger to seeing his father's fucking head just get cut off. Like, I wanted like Game of Thrones type scream of just like immense loss. Yeah, but I mean, it's in there regardless.
Yeah,
he's sitting watching this happen. Like,
well,
I needed a stronger reaction than him just like looking down into the I wanted more.
I never thought about that because whatever, Boba Fett. But it's not I bought it because to me it seemed like the whole thing where he's like looking around, it seemed to me like he wasn't so sure that he saw what he saw, so he was just kind of like looking to see, like, so I think he was more like, it seemed to me that he was more confused than like shocked about what he witnessed, because he was like looking around, he's like, wait what, and then he just like shuffles.
I think it would have given more emotion to the audience if it's like, oh my god, like this poor kid just watched his father just get fucking beheaded by the Jedi, of all people. So it builds not only his character but like the questioning of like the Jedi and their purpose.
Yeah.
And like them going against their ways. I think it just would have played out better if it made like Jango's death more of an impact.
So we end the arena, the whole shebang, because the clones show up. Um, and we see the clones in action for the first time with Yoda being the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they go out, they gotta stop Dooku because if he escapes, then more systems will rally to his cause. And when Dooku goes back to the Geonosians or the evil command center, Puggle the Lesser,
Poggle the
the
lesser.
main Geonosian dirtbag, um, like he has the plans for the Death Star with him,
Yeah.
and he's like, they can't let them discover this because
The
this is so
ultimate
important.
weapon. The
The
plans to the
ultimate weapon.
ultimate weapon.
And he gives it to Dooku, and Dooku says, "I'll bring it to Coruscant. They'll be much safer there with my master." This is the first time we hear about Dooku having a master. At this
Mm-hmm.
point, we don't know he's a Sith Lord. We don't know like much about him.
Yeah.
We know only that he's a Separatist leader,
Yeah.
and he has a master in Coruscant. So we're like starting to piece shit together. He's like, I think I know who that is. Um, so the whole Geonosian battle happens. I love that little moment when Padme gets dropped, like flies off the or what do you call it? Falls off the ship, and
Mm-hmm.
then Anakin freaks out and tells him to land, and you know Obi-Wan has to set him straight because it's this moment. It's I think one of the few moments in the final cut, at least, where Obi-Wan recognizes the fact that he knows that Anakin really
Yes.
likes Padme.
Don't let your personal feelings get in the way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Which it's much more implicit in the like even later in Revenge of the Sith.
Mm-hmm.
Like he knows
He
shit.
definitely knows there. Yeah, he knows some stuff.
And there's a deleted scene when Mace and Obi-Wan are talking about how and Obi-Wan tells him he's worried about the whole assignment because Anakin has an emotional connection to Padme. So
Right.
it was in some version of the movie it was a little more explicit, sorry, that Obi-Wan knew.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
Well,
So
you
we
also got to think,
yeah.
the Jedi are allowed to have sex. They're
Yeah,
just not
apparently
allowed to
that's what
have
they
personal attachments and, relationships and stuff.
right. Well, yeah, exactly. If you look into I recommend everyone to read if you're into the Star Wars noveling world. There's this great novel, Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray,
Mm-hmm.
and in that we get a glimpse into one of the Jedi's who is pretty liberal with the way they deal with with women and their relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and which makes Qui-Gon uncomfortable in that in
Oh
that
yeah.
novel. Uh, we get into the fight with Count Dooku, which we see him pull out the Force Lightning. So you're like, oh fuck, dark side user.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he pulls out his lightsaber, which I always thought was sick. That it was the hilt was like
I
bent.
liked I liked the style of it. I just I it never I never like really got any kind of strong reaction for like of Dooku. Just like he's
As a
not an
character, or
intimidating person because he's such an old man.
right?
And
But
and I know
yeah,
like
well,
yeah
Darth Maul
like
was that.
Ben Kenobi was an old guy and like other people are old in Star Wars. Like just something about Christopher Lee who was an amazing actor and like you know I think he obviously was an excellent actor and he played the part really well. It's just like he wasn't menacing. Like you look at the Darth Maul duel, like that like gets some emotion out of you. For this one it just was I don't know.
I think
And
menacing is the wrong way to go because I think they're going for a different thing.
they
You know,
were they were,
because
but
the
like
whole thing,
him
Darth
as a
Maul is meant to.
villain
Yeah,
just I don't know, it just didn't stick as well for me. And
well, he's a fallen Jedi,
I know,
and
but
that's
for the duel itself, I hate how Lucas used a lot of close-ups of the color of the lightsabers swinging by people's faces. So like Anakin versus Dooku, you just see a ton of their faces with the sabers swinging. You don't really see a lot of the actual combat, and I think it probably had to do with like Christopher Lee not being able to pull out a lot of moves and stuff, and they're trying to limit the CGI. But
right. I think it's
I
a
don't know. This was
choice.
probably the worst lightsaber fight in all Star Wars for me. It was just
Really.
it just wasn't
Even
anything
with
very
Yoda
special.
in the mix?
I include that sort of in it just because that part is so short.
Yeah, but it's a great fucking moment. I still remember it when I was 6 in theaters and
I
he pulled
remember
out
the
his
theater erupting
yeah,
when
for
Yoda
fucking
fights.
sure. Like
But then when he
that was the
starts
only thing you
flipping
talked
around,
about when the
yeah,
movie
but then
ended.
yeah,
You
but
were
the
like,
when
"Yo,
yeah,
the
that was the
Yoda
major
fight."
moment. But that was only because it was so jarring because we hadn't seen Yoda do anything and he was CGI now, so he could do that.
And it was
But
amazing.
to see him flipping around and shit and screaming
Yeah.
like the whole theater. I remember being 12 and I still distinctly remember the theater erupting in laughter. Like
Yeah.
it was more of like a
I was
funny
laughing.
thing. Yeah, it was a
It was
funny thing.
it was both I think it was funny because it's fucking Yoda going to town. And he's like going crazy.
I don't know.
I loved it. I
It
still
was
like
alright.
I had my moments where I was like, Yoda wouldn't fight. Like if you watch Yoda on Empire, but the whole idea
Yeah.
is that he become like you gotta get that journey going where he becomes
Yeah.
that. Um, I don't know, dude. I liked it. I like the little scene at the end.
Hmm.
It's not. It doesn't have the majesty or the grandness of the Darth Maul fight, of
Oh
course,
no,
but I don't think it's
not at all.
intending to. Um, and so we get that whole thing into motion. Anakin gets his hand cut off, which Luke did as well at the end of the middle movie,
Hmm.
his middle movie.
Yeah.
So we see the parallels there.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
It rhymes. Uh, and then we get the little thing at the end where Dooku goes to Sidious, and Sidious says, "Welcome home, Lord Tyrannus. You've
Lord
done well."
Tyrannus,
So now we
you have done
realize
well.
the person that recruited Jango Fett, if Jango Fett was telling the truth, was Tyrannus, who is Dooku, Darth
Now,
Tyrannus.
something we have to bring up here.
Hmm.
When Obi-Wan was captured by Dooku,
Yeah,
Dooku laid out
yeah,
everything to him. He did
yeah.
not just say, like, there's a Dark Lord somewhere out there. No, he specifically said, a Dark Lord named Darth Sidious is controlling the Republic. And Dooku basically makes it seem like they can work together to defeat him. And it just like, I know it's to create like confusion and, distrust,
I disagree.
but you have to wonder what is Dooku's motive here. And for me, I feel like Dooku wanted to turn Obi-Wan to the dark side to work together with him, become his apprentice, and kill Palpatine.
That's exactly what I think too. Like he was
Yeah.
trying to recruit an apprentice
But it
to
was
do the
never
whole Rule of
it
Two
was
thing.
never it was never fully explained
No, it
or
wasn't
like
explained.
revealed. But that's what I got out of it.
No, I did for sure. I always thought. Well, it's not until recently that I thought about it, but he definitely, I think, was trying to recruit an apprentice in order to overthrow Sidious,
Hmm.
and he was starting to lure him by saying him that we'll destroy the Sith, it'll be great.
Yeah.
And I think um, Count Dooku thinks highly of Obi-Wan because he was
Because he
Qui-Gon's
was
apprentice,
Qui-Gon's apprentice. Yeah.
and I think the one thing I do wonder is would if Qui-Gon
Would Qui-Gon have joined Dooku?
joined Dooku? That's one thing that I've always
I
thought
don't
about.
think that he would because Qui-Gon was the purest of Jedi in every sense.
Right. Right.
Even though he might have respected Dooku and like loved Dooku, I think that he would never agree to go in that direction.
Hmm.
But I think you're right about him having like this deep respect for Obi-Wan and like that's why he wanted to turn him. But
Hmm.
I think that when he realizes that Palpatine is trying to turn Anakin to the dark side, then Dooku, in their duel starts like saying like you have great anger and like all this stuff, but you don't use them. Like it seemed like Dooku was trying to sort of play that against Palpatine and have Anakin join him as his
Yeah.
apprentice.
I also like that idea that it differentiates Anakin and Obi-Wan so much. How they both go through the same trial, as it were. They
Yeah.
both get tempted by the dark side, and offered basically the same thing, which is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to bring order to the galaxy.
Yeah.
Uh, and Obi-Wan, of course, says no, which, speaks to how different he is from. And it's also one thing in the Clone Wars where Satine, the Duchess, Obi-Wan, who
Duchess
had a
Satine.
romance with, she gets murdered in front of him, and he still doesn't succumb to the dark side,
Yeah.
which Anakin would have in an instant. The same thing happened with Padme, I think.
Because and that's just such a brilliant piece of Anakin's character is he cannot deal with loss
Hmm.
after, he's once again this character who needs to fix things. Um he lost his mother, he lost his father figure, and he's desperate to have the family model that he's longed for his whole life.
Hmm. Yeah,
So, but Obi-Wan doesn't have these attachments. Obi-Wan knows he knows how to let go,
yeah,
and that's what Anakin could never do.
yeah. Because Obi-Wan was trained
So that's
since he
that's
was a
just the
baby.
low-key brilliance of the prequels.
Yeah, and the gun the Clone War has.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great declaration at the end of the movie. It's very dramatic, and we get this moment with the clone troopers boarding the ships, and
Oh, it's great. And then you hear the dark side. You hear um
the
you
Imperial
hear
March.
the Imperial March. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also love this little great moment. I think it's really subtle but great, where they're at the balcony, and the Chancellor is looking over the army,
Mm-hmm.
and Masameda is like mouth wide open. He's like kind of wowed at the
Yep.
whole thing,
Yeah.
and I love this little moment. You look it up when this scene happens.
Mm-hmm.
How Bail Organa, it's really disappointed that it has come to this.
Yeah.
Where he's kind of like hitting his hand against the handrail. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Damn it! Like,
Yep.
really, we're going to fucking war. Like, we
Yep.
have an army." Like you could see, like the Republic slowly losing their principles,
Yeah.
and we give the last scene is the wedding, because of course we have to have a wedding,
Mm-hmm.
otherwise they can't have sex. It's a movie for kids, and we also get the hand, which
Yeah, the robot hand.
doesn't have skin in it like Luke
Mm-hmm.
did, because it's before.
Yeah.
But you know, Iris, Attack of the Clones. Um, no, it's still a movie that I think it's probably one of the most dense Star Wars movies, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably one that it's gonna, and I think it's already happening. It's getting reevaluated and looked at in a different light. I certainly disliked this movie for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Do I still dislike it? Not as much as I did. I find enjoyment in it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a big part of the my dislike was the dialogue. But
Yep.
I have kind of like rationalized in my brain
Mm-hmm.
that and maybe I'm just like going insane, but I I do think that to a certain extent, of course, maybe he's not the greatest dialogue writer, but on the other hand, I do think it's somewhat on purpose.
Yeah.
Um, and when you see it in the grand opera of all three movies, or all six movies, I should say, um, this is a critical piece,
Mm-hmm.
because it's
A
when,
lot happens.
yeah, a lot happens. This is when
Mm-hmm.
the war gets declared, and this is and the whole thing is one war.
Yeah.
The Clone Wars, the Galactic Civil War, whatever. It's all the
Mm-hmm.
same thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just it's such a cool. There's a lot of great dramatic irony in this one as well,
Yeah.
that kind of comes into this resounding climax
Mm-hmm.
where I have good news, my lord. War has begun. Excellent. Everything is going as planned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those
There was, like I said before, I think there's a lot you can nitpick and make fun of and, say that it's crappy, but there's a lot of good too. And I've always
there's
enjoyed
good
this
in.
film. Like it was never like my least favorite. Um, it it certainly was as far as like the dialogue goes, but like you said, like you can make sense out of a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I really love the introduction of the clones, and the Geonosis battle was always, one of my favorite
Uh,
things, and getting to like relive that on like Star Wars Battlefront,
mm,
and it's just a very cool moment in Star Wars history that
yeah.
I think you have to give this movie credit for what it did. So I don't know. I thought it was a decent way to be, the middle point in this prequel trilogy. I think it's set up and built off of the Phantom Menace excellently, and gets us perfectly into Revenge of the Sith. Like it's a very good middle movie for what it is, for this
No, for
story.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. If I'd argue Revenge, because always people ask which one's the worst, Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones. I would have said Attack of the Clones all day long.
Yeah.
Now I'm not sure because one thing I'll give credit to Attack of the Clones is the editing and the pacing to me is better than Phantom Menace because that whole thing that George changed in Phantom Menace, adding new shit in the pod race and stuff. This one feels leaner at the same time as, but also feels full of stuff
Hmm.
in it.
Yeah.
Because there are action scenes like the droid factory scene that maybe you could
Yeah.
lift out, and we need this for tempo
Hmm.
reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude. Attack of the Clones. What do you guys think? Let us know, please. We'd like to know.
Yeah, we would definitely like to know. Let us know in our Instagram, on Facebook, in our messages, on our email.
Graffitis on the walls somewhere. I don't know. Well, don't do that. I'm not condoning it or anything.
I
You
condone
should.
it. Do it. Do
Do
it.
it. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to this great episode. I think
Yeah, and
it's a juicy one.
we have a great one coming up with Revenge of the Sith, which is one of my favorites. So stay tuned. And of course, we'll talk to you next time. May the force be with you.
Always.
Dank Farrik.